here to discuss all things NRL and anything sports related. Please give a warm Aussie g'day to the footy fanatic and America's own Corey Jackson in Outside the Sheds.
Greetings and salutations and welcome to Outside the Sheds post-Anzac Day or weekend edition. Shedheads, I hope you had an incredible Anzac weekend. I hope that the footy lived up to all of your expectations. I know half of you did not enjoy it, and I know half of you enjoyed it, if you know what I mean, because of the results on the field. I will say this right now. I tell you this time and time again. I love the round. It's probably my favorite round of all the year, and it lives up to it time and time again. And yes, I know maybe we didn't have the greatest of games this Anzac Day, or this Anzac round, I should say, but it still lived up to what it's meant to, and that is to honor those who had fallen, honor those who had served, and let people get away for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever it is, and just to immerse yourself into the game. And so I think it did that. I know that, like I said, some of the games left a little bit, we won't say anything, Dragons, but leave a little bit to the imagination of what could be. But we got through it. We enjoyed it. We took it all in. Let's start with the breakdown. And I've got to go about myself a little bit again, Shedheads, because your Shedadamus, when he has a chance for the angle to talk about all things Team Shedda, I've got to go with it. And we start with the picks. 7 of 8 for this last round. Pretty happy about that. That got our tally for the year at 41 of 62 at 66%. 66%. Okay, maybe I'm not beating Patrick Mahomes in completion percentage over here in the Divided States in the NFL. Gridiron to all of you. But still, I think that's pretty good. Especially how last year was an utter dumpster fire. We rebounded well. And this Anzac round really helped me get my numbers back up. But before we can go forward, we must go backwards. Let's go full breakdown of what just happened, what transpired, and what half of you are happy about and half of you are dejected about. Starting off, Tigers 33, Raiders 14. A game at the 8th wonder of the world. The Tigers taking on Ricky's boys. Sticky getting the guys up for full battle. I will say I've heard a lot of things about this match is not probably what you want to hear, and that's some people being a little upset about the 8th Wonders fan base saying a few crass things, some comments about the Viking clap, that type of stuff. But when a team has been down for so long, don't forget, still haven't made the final since 11, all right? And that's 2011. That's, let's not talk how many years, that's a long time, right? I think there's some pent-up aggression. I think there's some pent-up frustrations. It came out with the thumping of the green machine. All right, now, I've said this time and time again, so Willow, brace yourself as I go into this. But I say this time and time again, this team, meaning the Raiders, will get themselves corrected before the end of the season. I'm not worried about that team whatsoever. The Tigers, on the other hand, have a chance to do something they have not done, not in my freaking tenure with the NRL or Rugby League, and that is finish top 4. And the way this brand of football this team is playing right now, you have to think they have that potential to live up and to do this. Coming from behind at halftime again shows that character, that belief in themselves. You can't take anything away from Adam Dewey. This guy is really coming into his own. And if you look back at the tapes, not the Zabruder tapes, but the tapes from Outside the Sheds, you go back to listen to episodes from last season, I was pounding my head into my keyboard with keeping Dewey in the halves. And I think this team finally gets that. They understand what he means to this side, to their attack, and just the way that he puts his team on his back sometimes and runs with the ball. And he's continued to do that. One downside for the match for the Tigers faithful is Appy Curacao now being lost for 3 weeks because of that hip drop tackle. I know Benji was up in arms about that after the game. He didn't really know. And I think a lot of us don't know what actually is a 3 to 4 week tackle, what is not a bad hip drop tackle. It just seems fluid. fluid in interpretation. And you can't have that. You cannot have fluidity in a call that's so big in possibly the future playing of a player. And I'm saying that's going to be a big loss for the Tigers losing Appy for 3 weeks like this. And it's not an easy stretch that they're going to lose him for. So big victory for the Tigers. Green Machine, like I said, you will right the ships, I promise you. But the Tigers continue to march on, and they stay in the top two. Cowboys 46, Sharks 34. In a game that forgot about defense, let's just be honest, I don't know. I know these two coaches, Toddy Payton, for sure. And come on, these guys are all about, these two coaches are about defense. And for whatever reason, these two teams, for them to win, have to outscore you. That's great for if you like attacking football, because that was, 15 tries in the match? 15 tries. 15 tries. And if you're a purist at heart, that's got to make you want to vomit, I understand. But the way that the game is being officiated, the way that it's being pushed, it is for offense. And we definitely got that. But yes, it does make you kind of question what's going on, because we know when it comes down to crunch time, defense wins championships, and these two teams cannot put in a defensive performance right now that's going to get them to the promised land and definitely get the chocolates at the end of the season. Murtalangi gets a hat trick, and the Sharks just, I don't know, like I said, when the season came, I really believed strongly that this team had a strong chance to make a deep run in the finals, and I said they were going to play Penrith in the grand final. I know I shouldn't keep talking that up since it does not look like it's heading that way right now, but you know one thing about this show, I'm going to be honest with all of you, and I'm going to tell you when I make a mistake and when I don't. And don't forget, last week I did not make many mistakes. But it's really troublesome, and I don't know what this team has to do to right it. And they're right up against it. The Sharkies got the Tigers coming up this week, so it's not going to get any easier for them for a team that's going to push the offense, but they're going to face a team that's ready to dig in defensively. So the time is becoming very, very soon now for the Cronulla Sharks. But the Cows, again, outscore another team, continue to just get those wins, no matter if it's defensively ugly, they get it. One cool thing, Ruben Cotter won the Paul Green medal because, Paul Green played for both of these clubs, and he was the big coach for the grand final team that won it for the Cows over the Broncos. I think that was 15, I think. But anyway, that was, so congratulations to him about that. But wow, definitely offensive football if that's what you're looking for. But big victory for the Cows. Broncos 32, Bulldogs 12, depleted but not down. The Broncos rally again, and you know what? I have problems with Magic times. Again, go back to the tapes. I don't really know if he would have really been the type of coach that I would have loved to have played for, but for whatever reason, when he has the right type of players and they buy into what he is preaching, and I think he's got the perfect foil in Adam Reynolds because he's got a lot of time and tenure underneath his leadership structure in the way that he does it. This team, he's got his finger on the pulse, because when a lot of people thought that this team was going to crumble with the losses that they had, they've continued to buoy, come to the top, and just play their guts out. It is impressive. You're talking about a Dogs team that, just beats the Panthers, and you would expect this team to just ride that wave into building on that. And once again, the Canterbury Bulldogs, I hate to say this team has been in flux since they got rid of a lot of their players, and they went that whole direction with Lachlan Galvin and said, Sexton, Reed Monty, you guys aren't needed anymore. We're going in a different direction. And it has really come back and bite them in the deer ear. I'm sorry. I know some of you will look at me and send me messages saying that, Galvin hasn't been playing horrible footy. But the cohesion that was there when Sexton and Monty were there and they were a top four side, might not have been the most glam. They might not have been Hollywood. It might not have been, Reese Walsh eyes blinking at the camera. But Sexton and those guys had this team in a really good place and capacity, and they just don't seem. It's almost like they don't know their identity to an extent, and that's huge. That's huge because that's what Serraldo was supposed to come in there for the Bulldogs, right? And they just don't. And if you look at these two teams, the Bulldogs still are trying to find out who they are, never really settled, and the Broncos could lose half their team and they still know what will win them games. Ezra Mann playing a really solid game. I think he's only getting better. And that's got to be, if you're a Broncos fan and you're pumping your fists in the air, you got to feel very, very strong about where this team looks, where they're going. I'm saying they've done this without Reese. Ben Hunt's not there. Payne Haas is not there. And they just don't seem to want to take a step backwards. And they just find whatever they need to do to win the game. And if that is your team that you're following, you've got to feel good about that because they win with what they have. And it's the total opposite for the Bulldogs, where they don't really know who they are, what they want, who's going to be playing this week. All that just influx of I'm confused. So, hats off to the Broncos because they've shown so much heart and resolve during this time period where a lot of teams would have crumbled, but Madge has got this team focused. They know what they need to do, and they keep winning, and they get another one over a Bulldogs team that is confused. Let's just say that. Roosters 62, Dragons 16, new coach, same result. Young does not come in as Moses to part the Red Sea, to lead the Dragons to the Promised Land. It was a beatdown. That's all you can say. A lot of people were hoping that new voice in the shed was really going to just bring out something that was just internally inside this Dragons team that just hadn't been able to be released. But when you look on paper, they just don't have it. They just don't have the strike. They just don't have, Val Holmes is like a shoulder player he used to be. The halves, no matter if you bring in young blood or not, it just does not. It's just not working, and you feel bad for Dean Young because I know he really wants this job, but I don't know if this team's going to be able to get him the light that needs to shine upon him for the people, the powers that be, to look at him and say, "This is your club, and we think you're going to lead us in the future." Because I just don't know where they go. I don't know where they go. And it's sad because it's a proud organization. I think they sometimes get things wrong because there's a lot of fighting behind the scenes and what direction they need to go, who should lead them in that direction and all that type of stuff. But anyway, really disheartening if you're a Dragons fan. And then on the other side of the coin, you've got the Chooks, who seem to be now figuring out what's going on. I said this time and time again as it looked bad. I trust Robbo. I trust Trent Robinson. I think that he's that type of coach. I thought it was just going to take some time for them to figure out how they were going. But there's just too much talent. There's just too much talent up and down that roster for this team not to, pay it in full to an extent. And they're showing that. I'm saying Hollywood Walker and DCE are still a work in, they're still working this whole thing out. But again, Hollywood Walker, again, he wins, the Ashton Collar medal, and I think it's his third time he's won this. The young man is coming into his own in Roosters lore, and I really don't know how far this team can go because they are starting to show that they've got the potential to be a real juggernaut that could trouble the Panthers later on down the track and could make a deep push. Teddy, James Tedesco, and we're going to do a deeper dive and talk about Teddy here in a second, but James Tedesco is man, he's a man possessed. You think about where this guy started out, with the Tigers, with those back-to-back injuries of his knees and changing the way that he runs. And now the guy, you don't even think about James Tedesco ever getting injured. And early on in his career, you were wondering if his career was ever going to amount to anything because of injury. So, yeah, if you're a Chooks fan, you've got to be very, very, very happy right now. Yes, this offense is going to get better. I think it's, the smart thing and the great thing about DCE is he's such a footy head. He's so smart that he knows when to back away a little bit and then when to step forward and interject himself into the game a little bit more. And that's all you need. That's all you need. Savala's playing great in the centers now. There's just a lot of positives for the Sydney Roosters right now, and I think they're only going to get better. So, big victory for the Chooks, and it's crazy how these two teams are just totally going in a different direction. They're just night and day, the organizations of what's going on and what they look like they could be 4 or 5 weeks from now. It's very, very, very crazy to look at that entire two teams and what could happen. Warriors 20, Dolphins 18. The Waz coming back to the Rumble Isles. 4-point halftime deficit. Nothing to worry about, right? Nothing to worry about, because another team just like the Chooks that I think is showing time and time again they're going to be there later in the season is the New Zealand Warriors. They go down to a sold-out stadium in the city of the winds, city of sails, Wellington. And I've been to Wellington. It is exactly what they say. It is windy, windy, windy down there. Love Hell Pizza, by the way. But yeah, it shows you a lot. They just know what they're doing. That's the thing when we talk about these two clubs, the Roosters and the Waz. When you've got teams that know what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and how to, I don't want to say mask them, but how to make their strengths overpower their weakness and to let that ride out. And that's why when I say, when you look at the 4 teams that to me look the most strong, it's the Panthers, the Tigers, the Waz, and the Roosters. Because I think that their strengths far outweigh their weaknesses to an extent right now, right? But they just find ways to win. And in these type of matches, if you've watched the Waz for a long period of time, and I've, Sean Johnson was always one of my favorite players to watch. The gift that Sean had and the skill that he had blew me away. But there was never a strength thing that you would ever think. There was never a mental toughness about the Waz. They would switch off at times when they needed to switch on. If it wasn't kind of a flash and dash move, they didn't seem like they were really 100% ready to get dirty. They were looking for something to kind of motivate them, to spring them forward, all that type of stuff. And I think that's why they always, besides 2011, when SJ led the Waz to the grand final against DCE, and those two were both rookies against Manly, they just have never really been able to get that grip into that toughness side that team I think should always would have had. They just have forces of nature usually, guys that rattle fillings in your mouth when they hit you. So it is to me just a breath of fresh air seeing a Waz team that isn't afraid to get into the tussle, isn't afraid to win different ways. And I think that's why it's so cool to watch Tanner Boyd in the halves for exactly everything he's gone through to get where he's at. Chanel Harris Tavita, just every single, Tay-Marie Martin, every single one of those halves that could slot in there has to an extent a rags to riches story, has a tough hiccup in the road where they've made themselves rediscover their love for footy and then take it back and really seem like they play with house money. And I think that is just kind of the heartbeat of what the Waz are right now and why I think they're going to go deep into the finals. And I didn't know whether they were going to have this. I don't think anybody really saw Tanner Boyd being this key component to this team like he's turned out to be. But it's kind of a microcosm of what they are. It's a team that finds a way to win, sometimes not always pretty. But when it is pretty, man, they look pretty darn dynamic. So, big victory for the Waz. Another hiccup, another strong performance for the Dolphins where they don't get the chocolates at the end. and you know they've only got 2 wins. You know it's Christian Wolf still got a good set of hair on his head right now, but you know he's slowly starting to pull it out a little bit because they always keep getting right there and they just can't seem to get over the top. You know, once again, why it's leading to a gigantic match against the Storm for this round, and we're going to go into that in some detail in a second. Rabbitohs 48, Storm 6. The Bunnies going down to Melbourne and getting their first win in that city ever. And that is crazy to think about. Ever. The unfortunate luck that team has not had. They've had no luck whatsoever down in Melbourne. And to think how great of teams that have marched down to that city and have not been able to bring a victory out of it. Also, I think that old Clint Eastwood had lost 15 in a row to Bellyache, something crazy like that. And that is also insane to think about, right? He's one of the great coaches of the game, and he just has not had luck against his understudy, even though it's been so long since he was an understudy. But yeah, and boy, did they break the Hoodoo in style. Latrell looking like a freak. Latrell, I said this last week, Latrell Mitchell, even though he's been in the game forever, it feels like, seems like the game is slowing down for him. And if he could just put away some of that stuff that he doesn't need, you know, an extra shake of a guy, somebody throwing somebody out of the sideline, a late hit. If he can just get that, and so it's something we don't even think about, this guy, and some people will say that's what makes his footy, is that edge that Latrell plays with. But he doesn't need it. Because when he takes on and puts that team on his back, he is one of the best players in the competition, period. Period. And you watch that, man. He just surgically dissected the Storm. And I'm going to say something. They had a great deal of fun humiliating the Storm in that game. You could really see it. Tallis Duncan gets a hat trick. Johnston gets a double. If they could have put up 60, they would have done it if they had enough time. Because when it really set into them that this is our game, this is our day, there is nothing they can do about it, boy, did they turn it on. And it makes you look at the Rabbitohs as a force of nature and a team that could be there late in the season. And then in the story of Matt Dufty, how he's come in since, it's this team buy stock now because they are going in one direction, and that is straight up right now. So congratulations to the Bunnies over breaking that hoodoo and getting themselves back on top. And again, then you got the Storm. And we're going to talk about the Storm in our deep dive here in a second. Panthers 44, Knights 12. The revenge tour begins again up in the Hunter. Whoo! What can you say? That match was over with quickly. Dylan Edwards, this guy, I tell you, I think back when Dylan Edwards had hair and how a lot of people question why the heck is this guy the fullback for the Penrith Panthers. He made mistakes at times. He looked like he was not confident at times with taking the high ball. It was really, there was a moment in his career that it could have gone one way or the other. And it looked like it was going the other very, 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 very strongly. And he just flipped it. And now this guy is the incumbent half for the Blues. And man, that first half, he was everywhere. He single-handedly took apart the Knights in that first half. And it was something special to see. It was good to see, Dylan Brown actually getting the field back for the Knights. If you're a Knights fan, they seem like they're going to get it together, and I believe that. They got Ponga coming back, Brandon Best coming back this week, so it's going to be, they're right where they need to be. They're right where they need to be. And it's going to be, that's going to be a match between the Knights and the Rabbitohs this round. But big victory for the Panthers. They look, man, like a team that is on a mission. We all know that a lot of these guys are going to be testing the free agency market or going to be testing the market here coming up after the season's over. But they have a point to prove this year because that's the future. And 2026 is here right now, this season. So, yeah, I would, again, the revenge tour. That's all I'm going to say, the revenge tour. Sea Eagles 33, Eels 18. Form the Trot for Foz and the boys, and they just seem to be getting stronger. They just seem to get it. And we're going to talk about the Sea Eagles because it's pretty crazy, some of these numbers that I calculated and looked up that just kind of makes your mouth drop open. But maybe this is why some of these organizations go, they want a Manly man in there or they want a Broncos man in there, that type of stuff, where there's a mentality with some of these clubs and organizations that you have to keep a guy that understands what the heritage, what it means like to put that jersey on, so on and so forth. And to me, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. I'm saying you look at Benji with the Tigers too right now, a guy maybe the most famous West Tiger for sure, maybe not Balmain Tiger by any means, but West Tiger, the greatest player that's played there for that team, being the West Tigers. But he gets it, what Benji has done is he's added defense into their mentality, which sometimes has always been a problem for the West Tigers. But Foz just gets what it means to be a Manly Sea Eagle. And this team, he's just stripped it down and he's just turned them loose. We're getting ready. Wait till you hear these numbers that I've got for you when we go on this deep dive. But it's going to blow you away. But big victory. And the Eels, they played their heart out. They really, really did. Another one of these teams that just seem they cannot get on top because of injury. They're trying everything they possibly can. Mitchell Moses. You worry about Mitchell Moses. He's already got his upper thigh strapped up. So I don't know if he's got a pull in there or if he's got a little bit of groin situation going on. But you just wonder, he has to play at 100% week in and week out for this team to even have a chance because he just doesn't have those players to fall back on. But, and we've got to talk about the Olakau'atu hit on Dylan Walker. Wow. Because Dylan Walker was getting the ball and the crowd was booing him. We all know he had some legal situations when he played with the Manly Sea Eagles. But, boy, that fan base got what they wanted because he got cut in half by Olakau'atu, and now he's out for a little bit of time for the Eels. And I have to admit, I don't know if I've ever seen Dylan Walker get hit like that. I don't. That guy is he is a beast. And Olakau'atu made him look like a tiny half how he hit him. But great victory for the Sea Eagles. Like I said, they are now a team that has moved up into the top 8. And we're going to talk about them here in a second. Shedheads, I said earlier, we love Anzac Day, the pageantry, the mateship. Yes, the games didn't live up to maybe what we were all hoping they were going to be. Most of them were kind of blowouts to an extent. But taking all that away, Anzac Day still did what that round just as special. And I will say this, in every Anzac round that you listen to this show, we're going to talk about it in detail because it is that meaningful. But Anzac Day did leave us with a couple questions going forward. To me, the first one is, will the Storm ever win another match? All right, calm down now. I know the laughs are very, very strong when I say that because we are still talking about Bellyaches boys. We're still talking about a team that we very, very much feel they're coached by Craig Bellamy. All right, they're still a Melbourne Storm. Yes, they've lost 6 in a row. Yes, that's the first time they've done that since 2002. But, wow, it is just a shell of the club that we're supposed to be seeing time and time again. And this club now is 2-6. Like I said, that has never happened in the time frame that I have followed this game. To watch a Melbourne Storm team look that disheveled. And to break it down even more, if you watch the press conference after the game, I don't know if I've ever seen Craig Bellamy, the look of despair on his face, the look of just uncertainty. Because when a coach has his finger on the pulse of a club, an organization, on a team, on his playing group, who starts putting things into works that's worked before, and it's always worked before, when that doesn't work, you start looking at yourself in the mirror. And a reporter asked him a question, Craig, do you think your voice is not resonating in that locker room, which is insane? And Harry Grant quickly came to Bellyache's defense, saying, get out of here with that. That's ridiculous. This is about us and blah, blah, blah. But for that to even be questioned or asked to Craig Bellamy shows you how bad things are going there. We think every year that this Melbourne side is a top 4 club. And if they're not a top 4 club, they are definitely going to make the finals, right? And that to me is why, I hate to say this, but this match, this weekend against the Dolphins, 2 teams, both with two wins on their resume going into the game, is a match that has to be won by both sides. Now for us, if you don't have a dog in the fight, that's awesome. Because we love this type of footy. Because these 2 teams are going to be laying on the line. We got a team that's 12th and a team that's 16th on the ladder. And yeah, it's going to be fun. But for the Storm, the luck is just not falling in their favor right now. Because now Jerome Hughes is going to be out. And a lot of people thought that was going to be because of that wrist. Because you saw during the match when he went for that tackle and he hurt his wrist and he looked down and he slapped the ground. I think a lot of people were worried, including myself, that he re-injured that wrist and maybe had, hurt that fracture that he had in there. I don't think any of us really knew. And for the violent nature of the game, you don't know what's going on with a lot of these players, right? Or what they're experiencing. But you knew that something was wrong with Jerome Hughes. But it's a concussion that has made him succumb, that he's not going to play this week. Tyrone Wishart's going to be in there in the halves for him. But again, it is another obstacle for Craig Bellamy and this team to try to overcome to get where they want to be. I'm saying, and they've got to start winning now. Cameron Smith was talking about when they went through this and they lost 5 in a row, and he said that Bellamy and him talked, and he said, let's just strip it back. And they brought that offense and that whole team back to square one and said, we're just going to do just by the book. We're not adding anything crazy. We're just going to slowly get into the grind and go forward with it. And I don't think they lost another match the rest of the season after that. But I do not see that with this team. And yes, they have Harry Grant right now, but they don't have the big 3 to an extent because Hughes is out. Pappenhausen is not back there, even though Falango's playing great. That is the difference between that team that went 0-5. They don't have the big 3 or a couple big guys in there right now. Munster has, even though he's the captain for the Maroons, he just hasn't really inserted himself into this team the way that he needs to for them really to get over the hump. I'm saying Cameron Munster hasn't taken over a game yet. So there's a lot up in the air that's coming into this weekend, and you just really don't know. And for this slump to change and to end, the defense on the corners, on the edges, have to change. Because if the edge defense does not change for this team, they're going to have a really, really, really bad season. They may get the victory this week, but after that, and I think they have the Eels the week after this. So they have a chance to get on a roll, but that edge defense has got to change. It's got to change. And that's why, to me, Friday night's match at Suncorp is a celebrity death match type of match, because one person's going to be standing at the end of it, and that's a team that will look in the mirror and say, we've got a chance to get on a run here. And really, again, for the Storm, if they can just get over the Dolphins, you would think they would be the favorites against the Eels, and that would be 2 in a row, and then who knows what happens. But they got to start with this week right now being a must-win. We can't lose it no matter what. Like I said, for all of us that don't have a dog in the fight, can't wait to watch this match. Now, Shedheads, with the Ladies' State of Origin getting ready to kick off in a matter of hours, we all know that Origin season is upon us. It's exciting times. I've got my Origin jersey ready to wear up in Omaha for the College World Series. Not going to tell any of you what color it is, but I do have an Origin jersey I will be wearing during the... Matter of fact, now that I think about it, I have 6 Origin jerseys, but that's something else. We don't want to get Mrs. Shedadamas upset that sometimes I have bulk in a matter of things. But that being said, it is here. Anzac Round is here, and I think the question, and I know for half of you this isn't going to matter, but it might to an extent, is who's going to wear the number 1 for the Blues? And the reason you say this, because we're doing a deep dive into the last round, and why that is so relevant is because we had the 2 marquee players that are playing for that jersey just go off this last weekend. And I mean, they went off. And you know the 2 players I'm talking about. I'm talking about Dylan Edwards. I'm talking about James Teddy Tedesco. These guys showed the rugby league world why they're elite and why they're battling for the same jersey. Because Tedesco, 1 try, 278 running meters, 2 line breaks, 2 try assists, 5 tackle breaks, went off on Anzac Day. Unfortunately for Teddy, he still didn't win the medal for best player on ground for the match, but who cares? Teddy still showed that those legs are getting older, but his game is just getting better, which is insane to think about. And you guys know my whole feeling about this. I think that James Tedesco would still be my number 1. And this has nothing to do against Dylan Edwards. This is nothing against his play or anything. I just think James Tedesco, he has to have a bad game for me for a guy to lose his position. And if my feeling on this is, if Tedesco was playing for the Maroons and the way that they kind of stay loyal to some of their players, I don't think he would have ever been removed as the fullback for the Maroons if he was a Queenslander. That being said, and I say that quite a bit when we talk about the game like this, you've got Dylan Edwards. Because after Tedesco does that and just, lights fire to the Anzac match against the Dragons, Edwards goes up to the Hunter and just puts on a performance. Puts on that type of performance where he made the Knights look hapless in their own yard. It was impressive. I love Dylan Edwards. Like I said, I'm always been a big fan of his. We talked about him when he had hair. Now that he doesn't have hair, maybe that's just added a few mph to his running because he's so sleek and he just slicks that thing up and he gets cutting through the air. I don't know, but I will say this right now: Edwards' numbers against the Knights: 3 tries, 292 running meters, 2 line breaks, 2 line break assists, 1 try assist, and 7 tackle breaks. That first half was just otherworldly for Dylan Edwards. It was beautiful in a lot of ways. And for him to do that and surpass Teddy's numbers in all categories, it just shows you what you're dealing with here. I know Laurie Daly. Dylan Edwards is his guy. His thought process is there's going to be quite a few Panthers in that side. He wants to keep that cohesion level going. So I definitely feel that Dylan Edwards will be retaining his number 1 jersey, which to me I have no problem with. But it's just incredible that there's two guys playing the fullback position and playing it so well right now that we're just treated week in and week out with just stellar play. And you have to say this, both guys deserve that jersey. It's just Dylan Edwards' time, I think, the way that Lori Daly is coaching and the players he's picking for the Blues. But wow, what a weekend for both of those guys. Now, sitting 6th on the ladder and now winning 4 on the Trot, my number 3 is, can Fozball continue its dominant form? And as we think about this, the other feel-good story, or I would say the number one feel-good story right now in the game in the NRL, is the West Tigers, their resurgence, their top 4 standing right now, how this team's brand of footy is fun to watch, the way that they're also buying into defense is just the number one story right now. But you have to think, and I don't care if you despise Manly or not, what Kieran Foran has done for the Manly Seagulls coming in there, a team that looked like they didn't know which way, they didn't know where north was, they didn't know which direction south was. They were lost. And with the exact same players, Kieran Foran has come in there and just changed the fortunes for this franchise, and it's incredible. Now, I want to go into this with you right now. Under Anthony Seibold, the Manly Seagulls scored 20 points on average, scored 20 points per game, and surrendered 32 points per game. All right? And that's in 3 games, right? His 3 games that he was there. Under Kieran Foran, this is under 4 games, they're averaging 38 points a game and surrendering 16 points a game. Now, if that doesn't make you scratch the stubble on your chin or the little bit of hair you have on your head, I don't know what else will. That is a night and day team when you look at those numbers. And it's the same exact players. But I think if you look at these players, the happiness that they have playing under Kieran Foran has to be talked about. It has to be talked about when you hear, Tom Trbojevic saying that you would die on the field for this guy, like he said in an interview. And Jake Trbojevic is back to his giggly, bubbly, I love to be interviewed, I might give the best interview in the game self. And getting a try. Got a try last week. So it is, like I said, a lot of people have said for a while that Anthony Seibold just did not fit, just was not getting the best out of his side. And I don't like to talk about guys when they're down or anything like that. And I know this has been very, very tough. If you can just imagine what this is like for Seibold to see how this team has just gone forward and the happiness is inside the sheds now that Kieran Foran is there. But let's be honest. All happy stories, sometimes we don't know how it's going to end. The reason I'm saying this as I go into this breakdown is it's about time. And what I mean by it's about time, Manly is about ready to run into the cream of the competition. And it all starts Sunday with them taking on the Penrith Panthers on the road. We're going to find out in great detail if Fozball is what it looks like, or is it not 100% real to an extent? Because they're going to have every chance to show what is going on there is beyond special. Manly is now fixed right at their ship, and they're ready to go for this competition. And not a better team to do it against than the Penrith Panthers, because they, again, are, well, let me do it for Gus. They're creamy right now. Man, they're creamy right now. In all honesty, we know what Penrith is. And Penrith knows what this game means. Penrith knows that this is an up-and-coming team that has a lot of strike, and the best way to keep them at bay is to show them they don't deserve to be on the field with them. And that is how Penrith thinks, and that's the way they will play the game. So this is a barometer test. This is going to see what's going on with the Seagulls. Also, unfortunately for Manly, if they get through the Penrith Panthers, they've got the Tigers and the Broncos coming up. And not in that order. I think it's Broncos next and then the Tigers in the next 2 weeks. So to say that in a 4-week time period, we're going to exactly know what's going on at Manly. And let me put it this way, if they go 2 for 3 in this, Kieran Foran will be the head coach going forward with the Manly Seagulls. I don't think that's even a question. But they're going to have to play some incredible footy to win 2 out of 3 of these games. I don't think they can beat Penrith. Why am I giving you my picks already? Let's just say they're going to have to fight to get where they need to go, and I can't wait to watch it. But at this juncture, Fozball is here, and the competition is finding out about it week in and week out. Now, as we go into the 40-20, well, Shedheads, we all know the rugby league world has known the future is about ready to change. It's about ready to change. The horizon, we see it. We've got the Chiefs. We've got the Bears. We see them out there. See them. That big Bears Island is a lot closer than the Chiefs Island, but we're coming up onto it. Unfortunately for the Bears, they just have not acquired that splash yet. They haven't got that player that has made the rugby league world and the NRL go, wow, man, the Bears are here. They just haven't. They just haven't been able to do it. And it's not that they haven't gotten good players. We know about Wishart. We know about Nick Meaney. We know about some of these guys that are coming there. But none of these guys are marquee where you're like, we're going to put their name in lights that they're now Perth Bears. And then you've got the problems that are going behind the scenes with Mal Meninga and his coaching staff. And will Mal even see the first game with the Bears? Is he looking to get out? So there's a lot of uncertainty going on there. So for as great of a fan base as the Perth Bears have, especially the history of the North Sydney Bears, it's sad that this is kind of what's permeating right there. They just haven't been able to really make that huge explosion that a lot of people were hoping they were going to. That is not the case for that other island we say up there. It's a ways out there, but I see it. And that is the PNG Chiefs. Because the PNG Chiefs, how do I say this? They have taken the rugby league world by storm in the matter of the last couple of days. And that storm, or should I say explosion or bolt of lightning that has struck the tree outside the front yard, in the front yard, is the signing of Jerome Luai as player number 1 for the PNG Chiefs. And it's kind of sad for the Perth Bears that they have been around this long trying to get this thing together, and the Chiefs have just all of a sudden just exploded onto the scene with this signing of Jerome Luai. I don't think a lot of people saw this coming. I know there's always been rumblings with Jerome that he has the player options every year to look if he wants to stay on board or not with the Tigers. But this is seismic stuff, Shedheads. This is seismic stuff. The current captain for maybe one of the hottest teams, the hottest team in the competition besides the Penrith Panthers, just had their captain sign for a fledgling team for 2028. If that's not eye-opening, I don't know what is. Maybe a streaker coming across the field might be as eye-opening as that. You probably don't want to see that too, but you know what I'm saying. But Jerome, it's a 2-year deal worth about $1.2 million tax-free a year, and with a 3rd-year player option in 2030. So to say that Jerome is not just changed his landscape revenue-wise for his family is an understatement. I'm saying that is huge money for a guy that, when he was younger, had it tough. So I'm happy, beyond happy for Jerome Luai to make that type of splash money-wise for his family. But for Jerome, and if you know anything about Jerome, he's a guy that listens to that feeling in his heart that there's a calling, right? And Jerome feels that the signing to Papua New Guinea is bigger than just, I'm coming in to play for the Habs for a team. He thinks him coming to Papua New Guinea can change lives in that country. It is the only country in the world, Shedheads, that rugby league is their number one sport. The only country. That is their thing. That is their NFL for America. It's their EPL for England. It's their Bundesliga for Germany. It's their Serie A for Italy. That is it. Rugby league is the cream of the crop, the top of the mountain, the Elvis Presley. Okay, maybe not Elvis, but I love Elvis. For their country. And Jerome Luai feels that. Jerome Luai seems to understand that, yes, he could change young children's lives by looking up to him for playing for this team. And listen, if you don't like Jerome Luai because he thinks and sees a bigger vision, you're not a good person. I'm sorry. Like, even if this goes belly up and Jerome, doesn't pull this off, you still have to love when you hear somebody say that he thinks that this is bigger. And listen, West Tigers fans, you can't say anything because you look where that team was at before Jerome Luai arrived and where they're at now. And Romy adds something to a building. I'm saying he adds belief. I'm saying he's a warrior. He's a champion. He adds something. He adds credibility to your organization. And don't think that he's not going to provide that for PNG. And that's why they're thinking we just did a coup. We got a coup getting this guy. So when you see this signing, what it means going down the track, there now will be players that want to come play with Jerome Luai. There are players now not just looking at tax incentives or being tax-free. They're looking, this team means business. This team is ready to go after some of the best players in the game. And unlike the Perth Bears right now who can say, well, do you want to come play with Nick Meaney? No. Do you want to come play with Jerome Luai? Okay, that's game-changing. That is game-changing. And you see some of the players that are coming up on the horizon, they're looking to sign contracts for 2028. And it really makes you start scratching your head of what PNG might be. The NRL has said they don't want PNG to just be a kind of fly-by team that just comes in. They think PNG is going to hit the ground running. They think PNG could be a force right out of the gate. And with this type of signing, you have to think that they're not crazy with that. And I think this is just the first domino to fall. I really do. So if you're an NRL club, you've got to have this when the words PNG, those letters are said, there's got to be a cold shiver in your spine right now because this team means business. And if you think that's the last name that's going to be said that are going to make people go wow, you're crazy because they're coming. PNG is coming. Because they've got a Pied Piper, and we know who. Look at the guys that followed from Penrith, Luai, over to the Tigers. So, yeah, this is something, and it's something all of us need to watch going forward. Now, for the Tigers, this isn't all that bad because Luai just got done. He picked up that 1-year exemption, so he is going to play for the Tigers in 2027. So that's good. So they can continue to build that foundation. They can continue to keep that rebuild going. And they still have a captain, a guy in there who is going to be 100% dialed in. Because unlike a lot of guys who would check out, I think that's far from what Jerome Luai is going to do. He wants to leave a legacy with the Tigers before he moves on to the Chiefs. And I think he understands that. And I 100% believe that this is not going to put the blinders on where he's going to be thinking about 2028. He has business to finish. And I think when he leaves the Tigers, he's going to want to say, I did that. I led this team to that. And you want that. That is beyond cool. That is beyond cool. Now for the Tigers, I said they're building and building. You know, they've got players from within that they're looking at, that they have, that could possibly fit in the halves. But it is also funny in 2028, the halves that are coming, that are looking for a contract for that year. You've got Nathan Cleary. I don't think any of us believe Nathan Cleary is coming to the Tigers. Sam Walker. I think Hollywood Walker is either going to sign with the Chooks or he's going to go to the Broncos. Matt Burton. Heck, do we really think Burton's even a half? I think most people think that he's in the centers. Cameron Munster, we know money's going to be a lot older, and I don't think a young team like the Tigers are going to want an old head coming in there to go forward because it's going to be a limited amount of time. But here's a crazy one. Blaze Talangi for the Penrith Panthers. Can you imagine Blaze Talangi being with this young team? Just something to think about. Joey Walsh for the Sea Eagles, possibly coming in there. And then Mitchell Woods, the young gun for the Bulldogs. Wouldn't that be funny if the Tigers poached the up-and-coming guy for the Bulldogs and say, hey, I got a Galvin for you right here. So you've got all of that possibility for the Tigers looking forward to 2028. But like every story in rugby league, the one thing we can always say is just pay attention because by next week something's probably going to change or there's going to be something else. But I have a feeling the Tigers and the Chiefs will be on the tip of our tongue for a while going forward. Now, we just had some breaking news that just kind of hit the wire, Shedheads. Viliami Kikau, or as I call him, Big Billy Kikau, is now out for up to 12 weeks after having pec surgery. And once again, this just adds more drama for the Canterbury Bulldogs, losing Big Billy Kickout like that for the foreseeable future. That is a huge blow to that team, and it's going to be interesting going forward what that does. These are some troubling times for the Bulldogs, and they just keep getting a little bit more difficult week in and week out. And then tonight, Shedheads, I'm excited about this. Game 1, Women's State of Origin in Newcastle. I tell you something. More and more and more, the women's game grows on me. I really like it because the tackling, there's not a lot of laying in the ruck. It is just a lot of good fundamental footy. And I'm really excited for this State of Origin game. I really like it that there's not going to be any other NRL games that kind of encroach on the women's game. So it's front and center. And I will be watching the game tomorrow. I'm going to go get my lift in, and then I'm going to come back, and I am going to watch that State of Origin game. And I'm excited to see the ladies go out there and put on a good show all the way around. Now, as we go into the picks for round 9, because of the ladies' State of Origin, all the games start on Friday. We got it kicking off. Those Bulldogs we just talked about, Cowboys versus the Doggies. I had the Cows winning this even before the Billy Kickout news. I definitely doubled down even more. I think Toddy Payton, Toddy Payton, the Cowboys, Freudian slip, come down and beat the Bulldogs coming down to Sydney. I really feel that way, and I wouldn't be surprised if we all of a sudden see Drinky sitting on the couch with Matty Johns. But I've got the Cows beating the Dogs to kick off round 9. And then we get a doubleheader Friday night. Storm versus the Dolphins. I have the Melbourne Storm getting out from underneath this horrible streak. It's going to be a close game. I said again, celebrity death match at Suncorp. I've got the Storm winning by mace ball to the head to get the victory in this celebrity death match. I got the Storm winning it. Saturday, Raiders versus the Titans. This is another game that I think is going to be really, really fun to watch. But I've got Sticky's boys going up to the Gold Coast and getting a huge victory that they need to get their season righted up. So I'm going with the Raiders. Waz versus the Eels. We got the Wah movement will take over Sydney. It's going to be fun to watch. I've got the Waz beating the Eels. I just think there's too many injuries right now, and I think the Waz brand of footy matches up well against the Eels. Broncos versus the Chooks, the game everybody is talking about going into this round. It's going to be interesting. I think old Blue Eyes, not Frank Sinatra, the other Blue Eyes. I think Reece Walsh is back this week, but I still have it, the Chooks getting the victory. The Broncos are coming down to Sydney. I have the Chooks getting a big victory and stopping this run that the Broncos are currently on. And Sunday, Rabbitohs versus the Knights. This is my first haymaker of my picks. I've got the Knights with KP and Best coming back, pulling the upset in the Hunter, getting back in the win column, and upsetting the Rabbitohs. Tigers versus the Sharks. I got, even with the Jerome Luai news breaking, I've got the Tigers getting the victory over in Shack Park or Oceanland Park, whatever. I've got the Tigers getting a victory and keeping that momentum going. And finally, the other match that I think could be a match of the round, Sea Eagles versus the Panthers. The revenge tour to me does not change no matter how great Fozball has been. I've got the Panthers getting the victory there. I think it's going to be a lot closer than it would have been 4 weeks ago. But I've got the Panthers finally stopping that Fozball juggernaut. So we've got the Cows, the Storm, the Raiders, the Waz, the Chooks, the Knights, the Tigers, and the Panthers as our picks for the week. And my gun of the round, a lot of people thought I was going a different direction. Same team, not going with the big man. I'm going with Matt Dufty. That's right, Matt Dufty as my gun of the round. Could have picked him last week, but I'm going to tell you something. 1 try, 327 running meters, 2 line breaks, 1 line break assist, 1 try assist, and 7 tackle breaks. Matt Dufty, I think, and I'm going to say this, I'm doubling down, Shedheads. I know I'm not in Vegas. Golden Knights are getting ready to play, though. We'll be watching the game. I'm doubling down. Matt Dufty might keep that number 1 jersey for the whole rest of the season if he stays healthy. That's right. I heard it. You heard it here from your Shedadamas. I'm making that call. I'm going with the Duft. And not Duff Beer either. That's The Simpsons. But, yes, I'm going with Matt Dufty. My gun of the round, and it's so great. What a great story again. Another one of those feel-good stories in the NRL that we get time and time again. So congratulations, Dufty. Our first time gun of the round for Matt. Shedheads, I hope you're ready for Ladies' State of Origin. The ladies will put on a show. If you have not watched the Women's State of Origin, please turn it on. It is going to be some cracking footy. I can't wait. I'm really, really excited about it. But that being said, I want you guys have an incredible weekend. Be there for one another. Take it all in. This round 9 is going to live up to all expectation again. Yes, we all don't live in Papua New Guinea, so we do have to pay taxes. But still, enjoy what we have while we have it. But until next week, stay out of trouble. Don't get caught. This is Corey Jackson. You've been listening Outside the Sheds. Until next week, see ya.
And that was another fantastic episode of Outside the Sheds with Corey Jackson, talking all things NRL and all things sports. So please remember to smash the subscribe button and share this with your family and friends and show them what Australian sport is all about.